Hello guys, it's Sakuems. Welcome back to my channel. So if you're new here, hello, my name is Emily. I'm a French artist and YouTuber. In this week's video, I'm going to share with you 5 Copic marker blending tips. Those are essentials way to blend your Copics, and I feel like it's going to help you out, so I hope you will find it interesting. I'm going to talk about 5 techniques that I have been using in my artworks, and 2 of them I've used pretty much every single time. So the techniques I will share with you are called feathering, swirling technique, dabbing technique, the nail polish remover technique, and the nib to nib technique. Those are basically ways to use your markers. They work mostly with markers that have a Copic, like a brush tip, but it can also be used with the chisel tip, and especially with the dabbing technique and the nail polish remover. But of course, the feathering technique and the swirling technique does work a lot better with actual brush tip. But yeah, so not everyone has Copic markers, but you can find other kinds of markers that are a little bit more affordable, and you can still practice and use the same technique. I hope that you will find those helpful, and if you do, then don't forget to give a thumbs up to this video, and also tell me in the comment section which is the technique you are using yourself the most. And yeah, without further ado, I'm just gonna go straight into it and start with the feathering technique. So the first technique I'm going to share with you is called feathering, and for those who don't know, basically feathering is just a way to use the Copic brush by lifting the markers, almost using it like it's an actual feather, and it creates beautiful gradients, and that's how you can have more of a dense opaque tone to more of a lighter tone, and it helps with the blending, because when you use Copic markers or any alcohol markers, you basically are going to overlay colors on top of each other, and by having a lighter layer underneath, it is going to help blending the other shades on top. So for the feathering technique this time, now first of all colors work with the feathering technique, but it is slightly easier if you have colors that are similar, or they have about not like too far away, and also around the same color family. If you have a blue marker, try to shade either with purples or greens. You can skip away from like one family, but not much more. The feathering technique is just a way for you to blend pretty much everything, and that is used a lot with shading hair, for example. You can shade any fur, you can shade also clothing, anything with folds. It works also for tree trunks, it works for like water. You can use the feathering technique for water, especially if you create motions. And yeah, so for this technique, the colors are listed in the description below the video if you'd like to actually use the exact same ones. I'm using mainly blues, and then I gradually went into more of a blue-green yellowish tint in the end, just to create a bit more dimension. But yeah, I'll try my best basically in the video to not have it too fast-paced so you can see the technique itself. Feathering is a lot about controlling the motions and lifting your hand. It's really fast. The majority of people think that Copic marker, like using alcohol markers, is really hard because you don't know how to blend colors. One of the best way to blend colors is to work kind of fast, because the ink is wet. It's easier to blend when it's wet. If you wait for it to dry completely, you can still blend it, but it's going to be a little bit harder. It's just like that. You just follow the motion, like kind of like you want to create a line, but you also want to have it smudge. So you lift your marker before and you come on top, and it's almost like I'm focusing the ink on the center point, my focus point, and I'm always starting at the same part of the piece, same area, and then I gradually fan it out. And so where I will basically add a bit more ink as I come back with my medium shade and my light shade, I overlap those areas so it gets gradually darker, and other places where I haven't used as much ink, it gets lighter. And then once I am pretty much done with the basic shading, I will just use the medium shade and just come right on top and try to smudge everything. And what I did in the end is using more of a yellowish base marker. I've used YG00 just to have a bit more of a neon green highlight. I try to have more defined area and more smudgy, smoothly blend areas. That's how you create dimension within this technique. So for my second technique called swirling, this is the one that I use most of the time with my skin tone, coloring skin especially, or any other things that are a little bit more flat or rounded. It doesn't have a lot of texture. Swirling is the best way to shade with Copic markers. Basically use feathering and swirling technique combined sometimes, but usually it's still more of a swirling technique that I use, especially for skin coloring. I have decided to use a gradient effect with more of a pastel rainbowy color because I really want to show you how you can connect colors, and that's how Copic works really, and that's how it's working with pretty much every tool you will use. It also works with watercolors. So what you have to keep in mind is to keep the same color family and jump from one color family to another. So if you're using blue, then jump for a blue violet. Then from this blue violet, I've used a violet, so a V color. Then I've used a RV color. Then I use an R color, etc., etc. So I have a gradient effect. That means they're all also pretty much in the same brightness. And swirling is basically making little swirls. You dab the color, but also you press it and you go in like little round motions, and you switch with the different markers, and you come on top and you try to blend those area and go around it, and then you can switch to a different marker and do the exact same thing. And once pretty much all the colors are placed, I can also grab the in-between tones that I have. So I'm using my green to mix the yellow with the blues, and I will use my pink to mix with my blue and my purple, etc., etc. And that's how you create this cloudy effect type of shading. And this also of course can be used a lot in backgrounds. You can also use it, as I said, in skin. It also works well with more of a frizzy or curly hair. It can also be used, I suppose, with trees and like bushes. All of those little elements that have a bit more of a rounded texture can also work well with that technique. And yeah, so I really like using those colors. It really pops in the end. It doesn't really give any justice when you look at the video. It's a lot more vibrant in real life, but that's still basically what a swirling technique is, and it is the easiest technique to use with Copic markers. So if you are new to using markers, I will highly recommend you try this technique first before the feathering technique, because you will have a bit more understanding how the ink works. Then you can just move your way up there and then work with the feathering technique. So the next technique I would like to talk about is dabbing. So this is the one that I use in combination with the swirling and the feathering. Sometimes I want to create a bit more texture, and I use that a lot for freckles. I use it also to create just any dots or sand. It can also work with pebbles if you want to do a path, rocks, a dotted type of background, and mix the different colors. And yeah, it's kind of fun. I really like this technique also, and pretty easy. All you have to do is dab the markers, and you switch from different tones to more of a, you can, what I did is I basically grabbed a few olive-ish green, and I added a bit more of a yellow green, olive, and then a bit more darker green, and just come on top like that. And I try to switch between markers so they blend together, and it also creates like a little effect. It reminds me of like those color blinded little color scheme where you can read the number inside them. That is the dabbing technique. This one is a pretty easy technique also to approach if you're new to markers, so I will really recommend you use that. And like I said, it works perfectly for freckles on skin or any skin texture basically. All you have to do with skin is just do random size, not just actual dabbing and doing the exact same thing, but just do it randomly and use a slightly darker skin tone shade and just do little speckles and dab the colors until it's almost like smudging in the skin tone, so you don't have actual dots on the skin. That's very important. But yeah, that is the dabbing technique. The next technique I would like to share with you and blending tips, this is more of a texturing type of technique, is using nail polish remover. So you can also use actual alcohol or the colorless blending, like the colorless ink. from COPIC. I don't have the bottle, and it's also pretty expensive, but nail polish remover works exactly the same. And even if it's scented, you don't really use a lot, so you should be okay. I mean, I've basically used it before, and there's actually less fumes than if I was removing my nail polish with it. So nail polish remover basically acts as also a cleaning solution for your markers, if you'd like to know. And what it does is it lifts the color, and it creates like a dotted, smudgy type of look. It almost looks like water, for example. This is pretty much acting the same as if you put salt on watercolors. It will drink the ink and dissolve it, and it gives really interesting results. So what I did for this technique, it works best if you are using darker tones. Of course, it will show more. So I did a little gradient effect with some dark blue tone, and I went into turquoise and teal color and a lighter blue, and then I've used a Q-tip and actual nail polish remover, and I dabbed the color and also do the little swirls. You can basically combine the technique. You can also use the feathering technique with that, and it works also if you use the colorless marker with the brush tip. It can also create interesting texture, and so yeah, I think that's a pretty fun thing to do for backgrounds as well, for water effects, for anything really you want to apply texture to. It works really well. And the last thing that I did on this is also adding a bit of yellow on top, so it creates nice dimension for this texture, and I think it's a pretty interesting technique to use. Then the last technique that I would like to share with you is the nib to nib technique. So this is a blending tip that works really well for people who don't have a lot of markers. And also, if you do have a lot of markers, there's still some colors that are too different from each other, and you don't really have the exact same use, or they're just a little bit too dark for each other, and it's pretty hard to blend. And so the way to do that, you have to use nib to nib technique. That basically means you are going to put your flat coloring. That's the first thing. So I'm using a pretty dark yellow, and then I have a dark brown, and I can't really blend them together like that. So what I did is I grab the color from the nib of the darker tone, and I gradually use swirling motions until I dissolve it with my yellow tones, and I come back and forth like that. And I'm basically pushing the colors together on the nib, and then I come and I go on my paper and I do that. And after a while, the actual darker tone tends to be basically lighter because of all the yellow that I put into it. So I can come directly on my paper and dissolve that residue of yellow brownish mix on my artwork, and it helps just fuse everything on the paper, and I can just repeat the cycle again until I reach somehow of a darker brown on my drawing. And yeah, it also works really well with medium to lighter shade, and it also works well with the colorless blender marker, and this is a technique that I've used a lot in my one marker challenge. So if you'd like to check it out, I will have the iCard section in the corner, and you can get to see my one marker challenge, because I've used a lot of the nib to nib technique because I only had one color. It was a pretty dark tone, and I had to blend this with basically nothing so I can have a lighter shade. So I've used a lot of the colorless marker basically, and I've used the nib to nib technique. So if you'd like to see an accurate representation of this technique, you can check this video out. So that's basically it for this video, you guys. Hope you'll find it interesting. It was a lot of fun to record this process and just have fun with the texture and explain everything. I've been wanting to make more COPIC based tutorials, so hope you will enjoy and appreciate this video. Hope that I made sense explaining everything, and even if you don't exactly get what I'm saying, I think the video itself is also really helpful because you can really see the process. So yeah, I think that's basically what I had to say. If you did like this video, then please share it and comment and like. It really helps my channel a lot. And if you want to see more COPIC blending technique or any COPIC marker tutorial, then post a comment below and tell me what you'd like to see, and I will make it happen. So yeah, that's basically it. If you'd like to see more of my content, then don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss any video. I post every Saturday. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye guys!